Hello. Hello, friends. I don't know where that is. Okay. Okay. Hi. I'm so hectic today. I'm so sorry. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. It's already 7. I'm going to go ahead and get started. People are going to start trailing in soon. There was like 70 people that RSVP to this meeting. I doubt everybody's going to show up. That'd be kind of crazy. I wouldn't know exactly how to handle that. So I would love for people to come in and discuss, but 70 people, oh my God, I'd probably cry. So if this is your first time attending, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you. Welcome to the Morbidly Curious Book Club. I'm also live on TikTok. So if you see me glance over here, it's because I'm talking to people over here. We're discussing April's book, Hell in the Heartland. Hi. And I didn't get the chance to finish it. I have been running around like a mad woman this past couple of weeks. I just got back from Vegas. I just got back from then Raleigh. Right as I landed, I went to Raleigh to go have another meeting. And then I finally sat on my own couch for about 10 minutes and then hopped on this live. And then tomorrow I'm heading to Boone to go watch my baby sister graduate college. So I'm just a wreck right now, to be honest. A couple of housekeeping, not rules, but just things to keep in mind. Typically I'm in my boyfriend's room, which explains the Playboys behind me. Typically he's here playing video games, but tonight he is not. So no screaming tonight. First things first though, if you're new to book club, you don't have to speak if you don't want to. No pressure. Even if you haven't read the book and just want to hang out, totally fine. Just hang out. No worries, no pressure whatsoever. I won't like call you out like a teacher. This is kind of an obvious, but just in case, people are most likely going to have different opinions than you. So let's try and keep it civil if we can. I've never had that issue before, but you never know. Like some things might get a little heated. We discuss some interesting topics, so just keep that in mind. Some people might have some differing opinions. There is a raising hand emoji that you can, I believe, click, and it'll indicate to me that you are wanting to speak, especially if we have a bunch of people in here. I would hate for you to not get your thoughts out because other people are talking. I actually don't know where that is. So if you see a little, is it maybe reactions? Raise hand. There it is. Awesome. Okay, so if you want to do that to speak, that would help out a lot. Follow me on YouTube and Instagram. We can get more into that later as well, but I will be posting the discussion onto my YouTube page. It's just at You Can Call Me Patches. And then the Instagram is at the Morbidly Curious Book Club. Throughout the month, I try and post pictures of stuff from the book or just updates. So if you would like to hear anything more, just head on over there. I try and post some stuff to the book club's website, but of course, we're all pretty familiar with Instagram. Let's see. I think that's it. I'm having Riesling because I am overwhelmed. Hi, Nathan. Okay. I'm so excited to discuss this though, because I have seen either people have rated this 5 stars and loved it, like life-changing, one of the best true crime books that they have ever read. And then I've seen some like 1 and 2 stars. So I'm so curious. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. And I'm so appreciative if you have posted a picture of the book and put it on Instagram or something and tagged me. I love seeing those. I love reading them. It just fills me with joy. And again, thank you all for being here so much. So again, unfortunately, I did not have time to finish the book. However, what I did read, what did I read? I think it was around 100 pages. I just got to chapter 13. I was annotating it like crazy. I had a lot to say. Yeah, page 107. I think I'm going to completely understand both sides of the rating scale in the argument. I really think I'm going to, I get both ends. I really get both ends, but I would love to hear, or go ahead and like, you could physically, if your camera's up, you could go ahead and physically raise your hand. Did you love who loved this book? Who rated it like 5 stars? Amazing. I love the emoji. Oh my God, that makes me laugh so hard. Okay, now who didn't like it? Who was like, oh no. Okay, totally understand. That's gonna happen. I really hate to pick a book that people are like meh about, but it's going to happen regardless. I have to just accept it. So okay, so people who loved it, whoever raised their hand, you can go ahead and do that again, and go ahead and tell us what you loved about it. What did you rate it? If you rate books 1 to 10, 1 to 5, whatever, if you're comfortable with sharing that, what do you think the stronger points of the book were? Would you recommend this to a friend? Just kind of like basic questions right off the bat here. Thoughts on our 5-star or highly liked readers? Okay, Amber. Hi, Amber.
I really liked it because I think me and you kind of chatted the one time you did the reading sprint on TikTok. Like we were both like kind of fans of her, like the flowery writing, as I think people kind of were referring to. Because like for me, I really liked it because it kind of like it put you there. It was easy for me as somebody who has a hard time with things in my mind's eye. Her describing things as well as she did made me be able to kind of feel like I was there, as like she's like, you know, walking the fields or she's driving through the blizzards or anything like that. I felt like it kind of put me there. So it's kind of like almost like, obviously, like it's like almost like I'm not investigating with her, but it's like, you know, like following in her footsteps, almost like you do that like people will do like those like trips where like, you know, you're following in the footsteps of great writers and the classics. It's like some like kind of like that, where like, you know, she's explaining these things and it's kind of like almost to the point where like you could probably go find those places if you wanted to, because of how well she describes them. And if you wanted to go experience some of these things she's talking about, like the field where the trailer was, or like the road where Shane was killed, things like that. Like she described the feelings of it so well. It's not just like the location, but the feelings you get by being in those places. And me being somebody who goes a lot by energy and vibes and how places feel, I love that she was doing that, because she feels like she's telling you also how you might feel if you're in that place. Not just like it looks like this, it also feels like this because of this. And that's what I really liked about it, outside of like the whole true crime thing. I liked how she would like interject a lot of things, especially like if she started a chapter with that and then move on to the actual true crimey part. She would open chapters with like her experience of whatever she was going through at that time. And that's what I really liked about it. I know other people were the complete opposite and didn't like that type of writing. But for somebody like me, I absolutely loved it.
Do you think her previously being a fiction writer kind of helped with that?
I would definitely say so. Because like you already have in you that ability to describe places that you want people to be able to see in their mind's eyes. So like you're going to be able to describe that way better than maybe somebody who has only ever really done nonfiction and is used to describing something like, okay, this is a field. The field has this. The field is cold, blah, blah, blah. You might not be used to like saying like, the field is rippling with the waves of grain while the ice rivulets crackle in the air, blah, 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 blah. Like nonfiction writers, some can do that naturally, a lot try and fail very badly.
Sure.
And I always feel embarrassed for them reading it.
I'm definitely gonna cover more about this later, but it's sometimes, I mean, I read a lot of true crime nonfiction stuff, and sometimes some of those books feel very bogged down with just facts. And while that's what we're here for and that's what we're reading, sometimes it's just like
it's very dry.
This happened, and it's like, yeah, I know all these things happen. So it was kind of nice from what I read, feeling kind of like it was poetic at times and had the nice prose to it. So I definitely agree. Oh my gosh, hi.
And I think also part of it, because like she mentions at one part, like, you know, she struggled with like anxiety and depression her whole life, and her family, and also her family has that history of addiction. And so I think that also helped add to her poetic writing, because a lot of those things that were happening, she was already very well immersed in that experience. So like, it's not like she's writing about addiction from an outside perspective. Sure. She's very much writing about it from, she knows these feelings that you might feel, or knows like why things might happen the way they do, because, well, she's lived it.
Right.
And even then she still is like making these things sound poetic. Like, you know, what's his face? When Phil Wells just walking around the field, like singing gospel hymns in the air, but he's like this evil meth dealer, but she's still making it like him walking around this field singing gospel songs, that she's still making that sound poetic. Like, right. Ma'am, right, please come narrate my life.
Yeah, honestly, she's up there with who can write my biography. Who else loved it? Did anybody else want to talk about their experience with it? Yes, I saw Christina's hand emoji hand first, and then we'll go to Julie. Love it.
Yes. First, I just wanted to say this was my first time coming, so thank you for having me, and I already love it. But I will say I agree with Amber. I typed in the chat that it was just, it almost made you feel like you, like she said, you could know exactly where those places were, that you knew these people. I enjoyed how it didn't read like a textbook, so to speak. I know you said that sometimes they just like throw facts at you in true crime books, and I do like that sometimes, but I do enjoy how this was a lot different. This was the first book of hers that I have ever read, and I definitely think she already created a lifelong fan in me. And I also enjoyed how there was a lot of moving parts and different characters in this book, that they weren't good people in the sense of the things that they did, but she also reminded us that there were people that also loved them as well. So then she would talk to other people who cared about them, like girlfriends or people that lived with them. And even though that they were like, yeah, no, they weren't the best person, that doesn't mean that they also didn't care about them. So it kind of humanized every single person in this book. And even Shane and the family, like they had this massive tragedy happen to them, but she also highlighted things that had been spoken around town that the father had supposedly done, or that Shane had supposedly done, that weren't the best choices. So I did enjoy how she tried to come at it from a neutral standpoint and see both sides, whether that be the cops, whether it be the other meth dealers, whether it be the other family, anything at all. And it really gave it a full, well-rounded story, versus you leaving feeling like she was like biased towards one side and everything, versus the only thing that I felt she was biased towards was the truth, and figuring out the truth for the two girls and figuring out what happened to them in the end, which I really appreciated.
And that's like the most important part, right? Like
exactly. Yes.
Ultimately just shining light on the case at hand here, which is these two missing girls.
That's exactly how I feel like you want to walk away from a book like this, is just feeling like that's what she was focused on, which I do think she was 100%.
Right. Well, thank you for coming. I'm so glad this is your first time.
Thank you.
Julie. Hi, Julie.
Hi. So yeah, I definitely agree with everything Amber and Christina said. So just kind of piggybacking off of them. But I feel like the biggest thing about this book was like how much the culture of the town had to do with like the people in it, and like the problem with like meth addiction and all these things, that these like people that were not bad people, they just got caught up in a lot of different things. So I feel like her writing did such a good job of really illustrating what it was like to live in that town. Like I feel like if I were to Google it, I would get a very different depiction, but if I were to go there, that's how it would actually be. Which I just found out to be like really insightful and interesting. Like kind of like Amber was saying, I could actually go to those places and experience kind of what she was talking about. And so I am a big like fantasy person, so flowery writing is like my favorite thing in the world anyway. So when she was describing that stuff, I was just like, I'm here for it. Like, give me this. This is amazing. So yeah, I just love that aspect of it. And then again, her like search for the truth, like more than anything, there's so many details in this. I feel like it was really easy to get bogged down. There were a couple times where I was like, okay, I'm trying to keep everything straight and all the people straight, but I feel like there was no point where I was like having to go back and read. I felt like she just kept everything really organized, which I feel like is really hard to do in like a lot of true crime nonfiction I've read. It like gets really bogged down with details and names and dates, and I'm like, I can't keep any of this straight. But I just feel like she did a really good job of that, and made it more like a progression of a story than like just kind of recanting, like time and events and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's why I loved it.
Love that. Leslie. Hi, Leslie. You are muted. Let me go ahead and click that for you.
Unmute. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm from that area. I was raised in Miami, Oklahoma. My sister is the principal at Blue Jacket Schools right there. And she actually taught Laura. Yeah.
Oh, God. Welcome.
So this
Hi.
book for me was like, I could almost see the streets. I could almost, because that's where I was raised. And she did such a great job. I will, some of the stuff that she said about Oklahoma, some of that is just not quite true, but it's okay. I get it. We're not just all, Indians and cowboys and
Fell into
meth
the
dealers.
stereotype a little bit.
Just a little bit, but she really did a good job. And I do feel like the other girls were saying that she is passionate about the truth and finding out what happened to those girls. And, my sister was just saying it still affects people to this day. They still deal with it pretty strong. So anyway, it's fun to read a book that you're like, oh yeah, I've been there. I know exactly what's going on. So
Yeah. I haven't experienced that. So it's hard for me to, I'm sure that's wild. Like I'm sure
it
that's
is
absolutely wild.
It is really wild.
But you definitely think though that she did it justice and she did it appropriately. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think she did a really, really good job. Yeah.
Good to hear. Oh my God. Emily? Hi, girl. Sorry. That's one of my best friends from college, Emily. I saw Emily and I was like, that's not her. It is. Hi, girl. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. This is the first time I've gotten to like sit in.
I know. I'm so excited to have you. Caitlin. Hi, Caitlin.
Hi, this is my first time here. I'm so
I love
excited
your
to be
like
here.
blurred background. Like you've got a nice setup.
It's the mood, so you can't see all my dirty dishes.
Playboy's behind me. Are you kidding me?
I don't know how to follow Leslie. Leslie, I have so many questions for you.
Okay.
I think going off of what everyone else said, I loved that she was so focused on the truth and finding that truth. And I feel like in a lot of cases in true crime and true crime documentaries and just the genre in general, I love it when it focuses on crimes that have seemingly been forgotten, and even not forgotten, but handled so poorly while it was happening.
Yeah, it was
and
horrible.
Yeah, I think my favorite / most frustrating part of the whole book is her going through like, these are all the facts, and this is where the police didn't do their job / were corrupt in doing their job. This is the truth. And yeah, I love that she didn't stray away from that, and she presented all the facts to us about what happened and what didn't happen.
Yeah, it's I started writing stuff down. I'll bring it up here in a little bit, but I started bullet pointing. And again, I've for those who have joined recently, I actually didn't get to finish it. So this is just based off the first like 100 pages, which I think is the majority of like how the crime scene was handled. I have 14 different bullet points here of things that were handled wrongly. So we'll get to those in a second, because after a while I was like, I just got to start writing this shit down. This is insane. Okay, so people who gave it like 3 stars, like it was good, meh, like right in the middle. If you would like to raise your emoji hand and kind of go over your thoughts on it. Hi, Nathan. Oh, I'm so excited you're here.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, living the dream. I'm tired.
I
So good to see you though.
See you too. Yeah, I think what everyone said about like the writing is just like spectacular. The prose are just so grounding, which is a breath of fresh air sometimes with true crime. And I loved the settings of it, and how the settings are portrayed, and like the town really like comes alive. And it, like, as I was reading it, I was like, I want to read like a book from like every state. Like that was like the thought I had like while reading it. So yeah, I absolutely loved that part about it. My point is pretty spoilerish, and I know you haven't finished. Like, so how, like, I can try to be careful.
No,
but,
go ahead. I mean, I get it. It's all messed up. Get it? Go ahead.
Yeah. So unless just like my reading comprehension is just like not great, it seemed like the premise for the book was misleading. I think like the way it was written and how it presented these 2 conflicting cases, when it's solved by the end of it, you know, like that they figured it out, but like the whole book is like trying to make one case and trying to make the other case, but like the facts of the case, at least like legally, you know, like you can get into like, is, you know, were they right and who they like convicted and stuff, like that's a whole thing. But like the book's solved by the end of it, and it makes you think that it's a unsolved case, that like we have so many mysteries. And so here's the police corruption, which I thought was honestly probably my favorite book, or favorite part of the book. I loved that kind of like conspiracy and small town corruption like plot. I thought that was just so well done. But yeah, I just felt like it was very misleading, because like the last third, it like really wraps it up, and wraps it up, I think, a little too quickly, but also wraps it up in a way that just conflicts with the entire writing style of the first 2/3 of the book. So yeah, I don't know, like to me, like the ending was just so kind of underwhelming or just disappointing. I mean, glad there is like some at least psychological justice done in this case, but at the same time, the book wasn't leading to that point, and it didn't feel like it was leading to that point. It felt more like it was like the what's the really famous true crime book written I'll Be Gone in the Dark, where you're like, you don't know where the story's going to end because there is no ending. And that's kind of how like I felt that we were leading to that point, but that's not at all. So it just kind of fell flat for me.
Yeah, when I was looking up pictures to post about this book, or just do just a little bit of research, because I posted a video on my true crime page, this Ronnie Buzik kept popping up, and I was like, oh, it's solved. I didn't realize this was solved. Like, I thought it was like this big mystery, but then again, I still haven't finished it, so I'm assuming that this is the guy that did it, you know, this old man right here. So yeah, I agree with you on that for sure, because I didn't realize it was solved. Emily. Hi, friend.
Hi, friend. I really agree with everything Nathan just said. Like, the first part just got me so hard that I was so invested in like the police dropping the ball at like every turn. Like, it was so interesting. And then like part of it's like just my brain, that I had a really hard time following the drug side of it, like who everyone was. I thought like the girls got really lost in telling that story, and like it was hard to ground it because of that. And like also my biggest pet peeve was just that like I thought some of the most interesting parts of the story were just dropped. Like, there's this in the beginning, and forgive me because I read it like at the beginning of this month, so it was a while ago, but like she talks about how Laura Bible's mother like went to the Mexican cartel, and I was like, this is interesting. I was like, this is so cool. Like, what is happening? And then it's never mentioned again. And it just like, I don't know, a lot of things were just dropped in favor of like technicalities and like the giant tree of like who's who and like the drug operation. And it just lost me. Like, I thought that, and the same as Nathan, like the prose is so beautiful and like it's so strong in the beginning, but like I got a little lost. So it's like a 3, maybe 4 stars, but like more like a 3-star for me.
Yeah, I actually saw that you rated it 3 stars, and I almost texted you, but I was like, I want to go in unbiased because I saw your rating on Goodreads, and I was like, I'm gonna text her. No, I'm gonna wait. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I remember that part too, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? She goes to who? Yeah, I definitely agree. Somebody in my TikTok live telling Ashes said, I guess the ongoing part is finding the girls, which is a big part of this as well. We still have to remember that they are, even though it's solved per se, like we still have to remember that we have no idea where these girls are. But then again, I didn't finish it. So if there is a better idea to where they might be at the end of this, so underprepared for this. Okay, so then no, they're saying no. So yeah, I guess ongoing part is still finding the girls. Wholeheartedly agree. Vicky.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I agree, like the whole plot with the drugs and like this meth town, and there were several times I listened to the audiobook of this, and there were several places where I had to reread sections because I just got so lost with, her trying to explain like about this drug town and everybody's methed out, and what does that have to do with what's going on with the investigation, and who all these like people who are big in the drug selling and those kinds of, it did get really confusing. And I also agree with the ending. I could kind of see it leading there towards the end of the book, that's kind of where we were probably going to wind up, not what I would have guessed in the very beginning. But the fact that they had, and I know you haven't finished it, but the fact that they had everything they needed to convict this person, and it was literally sitting in a box on a shelf for all these years, and all it took was somebody just reading through it one time, and then they were able to make a, like, I was frustrated by that, so I can't even imagine how the families felt about that.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I loved the audiobook. I actually checked it out from Libby from my library first to listen and read along with, and I was like finding myself pausing it a lot because I was constantly like taking notes and underlining stuff. And then this will come up again later too, but I found myself getting incredibly frustrated with just how things were handled. So I feel like I kept taking breaks as well from reading this because I just get so angry, which happens quite often when you're reading true crime stuff or like watching anything, like any documentary, like how did we get here? What the hell is going on? So I definitely agree with what you're saying too. Salty Witch. Love that. Hi.
Hi. So it's also my first time.
Hi.
So hi.
Yeah.
It was about a 3-star for me, mostly because I love flowery language like all day long, but I felt like it got repetitive and excessive later. And then I felt like she started to insert herself so much into the story that I felt like it needed a different tagline. Almost like I was reading a diary at times, because she talks so heavily about her anxiety, and like to the point where she's talking about how she vomited or like started crying. And then when I got to the pictures, and it was kind of unsettling for me, and I understand like she was all about the families and them finding the girls and everything, but to see her with the families in the photos, it was really weird to me. And I just got this like super unsettling feeling of like, who is this about? Because I felt at some point it crossed a line. And beautiful prose, beautiful writer, but it just was that for me.
And I think in the pictures, if I remember correctly, like the family members are kind of like sitting, minding their business, but Jax is kind of like,
yeah, yeah, like, oh hey,
like standing above them, just smiling, and I was kind of like, a little strange. Okay, I get it. I get it. Leslie.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna throw this out here because you guys are gonna flip out. Okay, I told you about my sister that's the principal right there and all that stuff. Well, my brother-in-law, her husband, he has worked for funeral homes and in insurance. Okay, that's his whole life. And the Craig County deputies or whatever, he knows some of them. They said, hey, Jimmy, buddy, you need to come, put an application in. We got some spots open. And he says, well, I don't have any experience or anything. They said, oh, it doesn't matter. We just need a warm body. I'm not kidding. No. And so when you say that they screwed it up and you have 16, didn't you say you have like 16 on your list and it keeps going? I mean, hello. Yeah. It was so bad. They made so many mistakes right off the bat that could have maybe even saved those girls. If they had done that little, what was it, insurance card that they found on the road, they might have found those girls. I mean, it was, a total mess up. I agree with the last, I forgot her name. I'm sorry. Who talked before me? Was it Michelle?
Salty witch.
Okay, salty witch. She, I agree with her about her photo bombing herself in those pictures. The only thing I could think of was that maybe they were so glad to finally have somebody help with the investigation, that maybe had some experience or that was really invested in it. I don't know.
Sure.
That because I thought it was a little strange too.
I get that though. I definitely get that because I mean, this is I know a lot about true crime, not to just, I know a lot about this stuff, but this is honestly a case that I hadn't heard of. So it is nice to have something out there, right? Even though Laura Bible's mother seems to be running the departments down there.
Correct.
So, but still, it was very refreshing, I guess, to hear this sort of thing. Yes, Nathan.
Yeah. I think like exactly that notion is why this book, I think for a lot of people was, or I'm going to guess, was kind of fun because it wasn't the best known or like something we've heard in the media, like that part of it. And like going to small town Oklahoma was, and Arkansas, like that was the draw of this book, is like, we're in a completely new territory here. This isn't a serial killer set in Los Angeles. Like this is something new and unique that
not Bundy,
Yeah, like I think like that's one of those things that there's 1,000 of these cases all over the country, and this could have been any one of those. And I think that like that draws you in, and obviously, as I think everyone said, the language and the prose is really good. But I think the setting was probably like for me at least, the setting was just as much of a draw as like any other positive point of this book.
Yeah.
Kaylin, you were nodding so hard over there.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think it's really important that, yes, this is one case, but there's so many other cases that are just like this that aren't being talked about. But going off of the conversation about her kind of inserting herself into her life, into the lives of the family, there's a line, I don't know where that line is, but at the same time, I don't know if this book would have been as good or well written if she hadn't emotionally connected to it in the way she had. Because I think that really helped us emotionally connect to it and like be immersed in that world and with that family.
Amber, you are muted. Sorry, I have everybody mute when they first join, just in case.
It's fine.
Or something.
And then I remuted after I talked. But I was gonna say basically the same thing that Caitlin says. Like I don't think the book would have been as good as it was, and the prose would have been as good as it was, and like just everything in general would have been as, I think, almost as intimate and as detailed as it would have been if she hadn't kind of like blurred those boundaries to get as close as she did to the families. And I think also it's not completely her. I think the families probably also blurred those boundaries a little bit, because again, like as we're saying, like who's been there to actually put this much work into the case and actually care and actually want to help and figure things out and interview people and all of that. Like who, like outside of like Lorraine and the families, who's been there? Like I know there's been 2 like TV episodes on it, but obviously I think those occurred because of the book. So it's like, I think it's probably like they kind of allowed her to be that close, because for them, they're like, somebody wants to actually has like come from like New York City, this place, this big city has come to our little tiny town to learn about and write about it. And instead of like, and is actually living here to learn about it, instead of just like, you kind of know, like coming in for a couple days and then leaving, coming in for a couple, like she's actually immersing herself within the culture and the towns and everything, and actively learning not just about the case, but also learning about the family and learning about the towns and the culture and everything about it. And that, like, I think that's kind of why it's like that weird boundary blurring, because it was happening on both sides.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, I don't think the book would have been as good, and she would have had some of those conversations she had with people like Lorraine or Glenn or the grandparents. Like if she hadn't been as like close and intimate, they wouldn't have opened up to her like that if they hadn't kind of had those blurred boundaries, because I think they would have still been semi-closed off to like, who is this, you know, person we've never heard of wanting to come in and tell the story. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, she actually cares.
Right.
Okay, we'll tell her everything.
Right.
That
is huge too. That is a big thing for families to openly talk about, like one of the worst days and moments of their life. You know, that is very important.
And like, and for them, it's like not even like one of the worst days. It's like the worst, what, 2, 3, 4 years? Like not even
their life. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the whole second half of their life. It's not even like, you know, so it's like to open up to everything they've gone through to some random person they've never met before who came in. It's like, hi, I would like to write a book about this.
Right.
Like, it's like one, like you're not going to open up to like any person like that. It's like you have to have that special type of, like, as we're saying, that energy, that like vibing off of each other. Like obviously they had like that energy connection of like where they could trust each other and vibe off each other, and that allowed them to create what ended up being written. Whereas otherwise I think it could have very much ended up as like one of those very dry, factual, this happened type of thing, and it wouldn't have like led, I think, to kind of how everything came together.
Yeah.
Melanie. Hi.
Yeah, he didn't ask for the low stars review, but
Yeah,
I can't.
Who hated this book?
This girl hated that book.
Oh
and
no.
Having Leslie here, I feel maybe you can speak to how you felt about it more than I can. I'm a Canadian, so I'm pretty far removed. But I felt offended for the people of the community a little bit. You guys are talking about how she kind of inserted herself. That was, to some degree, I think that is necessary. Like you're talking about, to get the information and get the trust of people in the community, especially in closed communities like, you know, small towns where people don't trust as easily as maybe in a larger community. But this felt very much like some East Coaster inserting herself into the situation for motivations that are not as more disingenuous than I think that she wanted to come across as. It felt like tragedy tourism, I think, is the note that I made. It sounded like she was describing people down to like their most basic stereotypes, describing the area as like a tourist would describe an area, describing the people like, you know, Jane Goodall amongst gorillas, like very sort of, I'm an outsider, I'm different. She talks about how she dresses. I don't care how she dresses. And I found it really disingenuous. And maybe part of my problem is I do like those more factually driven case examining types of true crime novels, where I found this kind of bounced around from a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different focal points, always coming back to the author. And I didn't care about the author, and I found it very frustrating to read.
I'm so sorry.
No, I get it though. I can see where she's coming from.
Yeah, 100%. Which, you know, I'll talk about that in a minute. Who else really didn't like this book, like at all? Melanie, you're on your own. No, I'm just kidding. Kidding. You know, and I've had somewhat of a conversation with Nathan about this. We did a podcast episode from, I do have a Morbidly Curious Book Club podcast over on my Patreon, where we just kind of take a person who really didn't like the book and a person who did like the book and have a little bit more in-depth discussion. I'm still editing Marches. I'm so behind. But similar to a conversation I've had with Nathan before about how insanely popular true crime stories like this have become. It's my job now to talk about true crime stuff. I mean, I'm a podcaster. If y'all don't know that about me, I'm sure you do, but I literally talk about this stuff all the time. And it's weird because I have been in that place where I am researching cases, and I don't really have dreams, or not. As if I do, they're just like weird, or because I like drank too much before, and like now my brain is like fully operating. But sometimes I would have horrible nightmares because of the stuff that I was researching for my job, for the podcast, for TikTok, for YouTube, for videos. And then I would feel like guilty, because why am I suffering from this when it has nothing to do with me? You know what I mean? I'm just researching it. Like, I'm just a third party person who's trying to inform other people about this really tragic event. Why does this bother? And I think it bothers us because we don't like to think that horrible things like this are happening to other humans. We don't like to think that girls are missing because of police corruption. And I think it gets to us sometimes. And I just came from CrimeCon. That's why I was in Vegas. There is a whole convention now for true crime stuff, but it's not what you think. And it's not just like a bunch, it's victims' family members. It's people who have sold books based on their experience. I met an old couple who have a book out. They survived a serial killer in like the 80s, and they are there to tell their story. I also got to meet Maura Murray's sister, Julie Murray, who was like the nicest fucking person I've ever met. She offered to take me to the airport. She has my phone number now. And it's just like, it's a weird connection that sometimes because you sometimes see them almost like as a celebrity, like, you know, it's a weird relationship. But she was there along with the Delphi murder, Liberty German's sister was there, Kelsey German, Sarah Turney was there, and they're all sharing their stories about losing their sisters. But specifically Julie Murray and I were having a conversation because I told her, you know, you've commented on my stuff before on TikTok about Maura Murray missing, which is, you know, it's a huge sensationalized case now at this point. And I appreciate your kind words, because sometimes as a true crime reporter, I guess, or a TikToker or content creator, I always have to keep in mind the victims' families. And she said, I'll never forget it. She was like, we don't care if you talk about it. All we care about is if you tell the truth. That's all we care about. We just want you to be honest. And I'm sure it's going to vary between like who wants, I mean, at this point, Maura Murray, again, is one of the most talked about cases of our time. And, you know, she might have a different perspective than somebody else. But specifically, there's a book about Maura Murray's case written by what's this dude's name? James Renner. And she said specifically, sorry, I'm just like putting her information out there, but she said there's people who do it right and there's people who do it wrong. And James Renner did it very wrong, where he is talking about Maura Murray being involved in orgies and all these sex parties that never happened. But his book is called True Crime Addict, and how he literally, it says, how I lost myself in the mysterious disappearance of Maura Murray. So I have to keep those in mind too when I'm reading books like this. Like there's a spectrum, right? We've got James Renner over here, who was there, by the way, who was at CrimeCon with us. That was very strange. And then we have other books that have done it very, very well. But ultimately, she said, if you talk about these kind of things, you just have to be honest. You have to just tell the truth. You have to tell the facts. I understand that people are going to want to theorize. And I understand that people are going to want to make assumptions because they might be onto something, especially when it comes to cases like Maura Murray, who vanished off the face of the earth. Like aliens aren't even out of the question at this point. She disappeared. But keep in mind, like there are things too that you can do correctly, and there are things that you can completely mess up. And James Renner is one of those people. And recently somehow created like fake emails from Maura coming from Canada, just really disgusting stuff. So of course, in this true crime sphere, there's always a way to do it and there's a way not to do it. I just, whenever she mentioned that to me, I was like, I have to bring that up in the book club because I know some people are going to not love how Jax Miller like handled this case. And I totally understand where you're coming from. And I'm still kind of on the fence exactly of how I feel about it. I haven't finished the book, but I get an idea of what's going on. And I also was kind of turned off by those pictures a little bit. Even asking, like, I took a picture with Sarah Turney at CrimeCon, and even that was kind of just like, why are we taking pictures with you? You know, and like I'm here to help bring justice to your family. Like, why are we treating this like a celebrity sighting? You know what I mean? So that's my tangent. Emily, I saw your hand raised way before. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. When Melanie started talking, I remembered why I gave it 3 stars. Like suddenly I was like, okay, now we get, like, I got it. I feel like I do understand it's like, on one hand, 3 stars is just down the middle. It's exactly why. Cause like, I understand why it was written a certain type of way, because like the truth is like Michelle McNamara, when she did I'll Be Gone in the Dark, is like a cultural reset. Like that is like, we can't just read like fact by fact by fact, because like we've seen how well it can be done and how like it actually like changes the game with like these true crime books. Like that book was just insane and it was so good. And she like actually put her entire life and soul into that case, and like it showed, and like people cared about it because of that. And so I do understand why it was written that way. And like, I think the bar is just a lot higher. But to me, like some of the language she was using felt so like flippant that it like there was one case in particular that rubbed me like the wrong way, which is like in an effort to like humanize the brother character, which like I totally understand why she was doing it. She like said something a little crazy that was like, I totally relate to the brother. In fact, I can't relate to the girls that this book is about because, you know, they're so perfect. Like, I don't relate to being that perfect. And I was like, why are you saying that when the book is literally about these 2 girls and finding it was just so wild. And like, I get it. Again, I get like the intent behind it, which was like this brother, I think it was the brother, right? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the brother was like killed by these cops. And like, it was this horrific situation that everyone always wants to have opinions about because, you know, it's like a cop murder. And like, I get where she was coming from, but like in the process of trying to humanize this other person, she like dehumanized these 2 people. And I felt like she did that a lot through the book and it drove me actually crazy. So that's why I gave it 3 stars. No, shut up.
No, you're good. You're good. I do want to tell you, Paul Holes wrote a book recently called Unmasked, and he is the detective who solved the Golden State Killer case. He has a chapter towards the end just titled Michelle. Wrecked me. Wrecked me. I was not okay. I had to put the book down. It's one of the best memoirs I've ever read. But it's so sad for those of you who don't know, Michelle McNamara actually died in the middle of literally trying to, I'm sure you all know this, but literally trying to solve the Golden State Killer case. Like, she's the one who brought it to like everyone's attention, like, hey, by the way, this is a serial essayer, you know, to keep it nice in here, but it's a phenomenal book. If you get Unmasked, you should read it, but it's just a chapter called Michelle. And once I saw it, I was like, I'm gonna need a day to read that and get through that. Anyway, but yeah, again, with that spectrum, right? We have like I'll Be Gone in the Dark, and then we have True Crime Addict. Like we have this wheel here of what's really done well and what's not done well. Melanie.
I just wanted to say that like Emily nailed it. It's the flippant language that makes it the idea of the book come across a completely different way than I think. We've talked about it a little bit, talking about how she, you know, connected with the family and got really involved. And the motivation for all that, because of the flippant language and because of the weird tangents about subjects that really weren't focused on the girls, which I think this whole book should have been focused on the girls. I think that the background with the family was important, but I think we lost the girls about halfway through. And there was a lot of comparing herself to people in the town, to people that were suspects, and comparing herself to again, like Emily said, comparing herself to the girls, comparing herself to the brother. That isn't productive. And it made it all come across as, I just want to be part of this. Not so much I care about these people. I just want to put my name in with these people. And I found that really kind of gross. And that's more or less what bothered me, is not even the pictures, the photobombing. Okay, yeah, you were there, you lived with these people for a while. All right. But like, she talks about the grandparents and their conspiracy theories, and creates characters of these human beings who experience these things. And I found that to be just really icky. And other
A lot
books
of
like
conspiracy theories from what I remember. They were like all about that kind of thing. Right?
yeah. And that's, you know, if that's who they were, that's who they were. But it's the way that she describes them, focusing on that very heavily, those quirks, to make them into Dr. Phil people. Like, this whole book read to me like something you would see on like TLC with a sensationalized title. Not so much about the girls, but about all these crazy kooks in Oklahoma. Did kind of bug me in that way.
Leslie's laughing. Sorry, I had to turn on the air. I was absolutely sweating my ass off. Okay, Nathan.
Okay, so I read a kind of silly amount of nonfiction, and one of the things that it comes up a lot is like, how did this book contract happen? And that was like one of the things with this book that like, oh, like it felt like I have a contract, so I gotta go like write this. And like, I think with true crime, it's hard because like the whole monetary, how do you pay for like the traveling and stuff? But this really felt like, okay, like you got a contract to write this book, and so it happened. And like, it's not a personal story. There's not like this personal narrative that like draws you in. And so like a lot of those types of books, and even things outside of like the true crime genre, it's like you can just tell like, oh, this author had to publish a book, you know, like it's just it feels a little forced at times. And one of the things that I hate the most, it's kind of like just a trope in nonfiction, is like during the concluding chapters they talk about like, well, I'm, you know, I've got to send this book off to the publisher. And you're like, then like maybe there was more to the story, like maybe you needed to extend the deadline. And like that whole just like, I don't know, that's something I think of almost every book that I read, is like, how was the contract for this book done? It wasn't just like a book that was written because you were obsessed and then you asked to get it published. It was like, no, you got the contract and then you went and read it. And that, I think that like changes the dynamic of how the story comes across, and certainly why I maybe not like fully agree with like the very low ratings, but like why I definitely understand like how that can like harm the reader's like expectations for what the story means, and like how it extends beyond just like the pages, and how it's like real people's lives that you're dealing with.
I am curious, Leslie, I see your hand. I am curious though, if I remember correctly, it was in the first 100 pages, because I'm pretty sure this happened. Wasn't Jax Miller at one point getting these like mysterious phone calls of people telling her to like get out? Was that happening? Okay. Because that too could definitely have like a weird effect on you as well. But it goes back to our conversations about inserting yourself. So that I totally understand. That is definitely creepy, but I also get it from like a small town where they're like, please leave us alone. Like, we're just here to live our lives. Leslie.
Okay. This community is very, very small, and there are a lot of, let's see, quirky people. And I don't mean it like, I'm just saying
exactly what you're saying.
You know what I mean? They're they're just a little backward. And I'm not talking about the Bibles or the Freemans, but like how she describes the grandparents and stuff. Because I asked my sister, because I've been, I moved away at 20 years old and I'm 59. So I've been gone for a long time. I live in Claremore though. So I'm like 45 minutes from there. So, but Amy said that there, Blue Jacket is right there. And there is a lot of craziness with individuals and families that just, it's like generational almost, a lot of crazy stuff. But I totally, now that they were talking about how they were rating the book, I can see how I completely agree with how it seems like she, just had to write this book to finish it at a certain point. And I think like that whole middle section with where she kind of goes off away from the girls, she brings it back at the end about the girls. I don't know, maybe she felt like she needed to fill it up a little more with that. Some of it tied back in though, but not all of it for sure.
Yeah, no, I get it. I do. And I totally get what you, I'm in a very small town in North Carolina. Trust me. I get it.
Yeah.
I live in a trailer park in North Carolina. Okay, I'm sure I can walk outside and have some amazing conversations right now.
Yeah.
Amber.
I was just gonna say, like, going back when you were saying all the threats, I was just gonna say, bring up like what actually, because I was saying, like, we all know that I am like the annotation tabbing
I'm right there
queen.
I got
So I'm literally flipping through. I'm like, I know I've already tabbed this. I know I've marked it down. But it's like, yeah, they're like, I guess like she says, like somebody wrote, I advise you to tread carefully on your project. A member of law enforcement publicly writes on my Facebook wall and then never talks to me again. They won't think twice about killing you, another source tells her. But who are they? The calls with the heavy breathing and the cryptic messages from obviously fake Facebook accounts come about a year after I start this project. And then she goes on to talk about how that kind of increases the anxiety that she's been suffering from, because, well, that would increase my anxiety too.
Yeah.
If people are telling me that I'm going to die from writing this book. But yeah, so like, that's where like, I was just going to say, those are like the couple incidents she talks about where like, she literally is getting a death threat at one point. And so that's why I'm just like, yeah, like
that makes sense.
I can see why, the anxiety she had might be a little strong. She was getting death threats about writing her book. All right. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that. So yeah, no, because I was like, I have an annotation here. It's like, because I have this long drawn out theory just from my experience with police, but my annotation here is like, again, I say that it was law enforcement backing whoever Danny owed money to, and maybe killing Shane was a warning. But that's the annotation I have here where they say they won't think twice about killing you. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to mention, like the actual things.
Yeah, I knew it was in there somewhere because I was like, yeah, that warrants a little bit of worrisome.
Yeah, it's like as soon as you said, I'm like, oh, I know where that is. I have it marked. Let me go find it.
Melanie, do you want to elaborate on your comment? You don't have to if you don't want to.
I feel like there were points throughout the book, and unfortunately I read this once you guys announced that this was going to be the book, so it was a while ago. So I don't remember all the specifics, and maybe I should start tabbing.
Listen, even if you do, I will come to meetings and be like, oh shit, where was that? So like, even if I did, there's no point. It's just for you.
But and maybe she did get, some questionable comments, because that does happen. We're all on the internet, we know. But I felt like a lot of points in the book, she was just adding a little personal drama to spice it up a little bit. Like when, I don't know, again, it was just sort of inserting what was happening with her versus what she was getting from people about the case. So again, it might just be me being preferential to those more analytical approaches to true crime.
Seems like she was really feeding into that narrative that we are hearing.
How crazy these people, they threatened me right off the bat when I started looking. And it's just like, I don't care. I honestly don't care what you interacting with like people about anything other than the case. I want to hear what I would have loved if Laura's mother was the author of this book. I would have probably enjoyed it more if Jax acted more like a ghostwriter. Maybe not exactly that, but
Terry says yes.
Laura's words. I would have, or Laura's mother's words. I would have liked to have had that perspective more than the filtered through Jax's eyes perspective. And I know some of you liked that kind of style of true crime where you're getting it filtered through her perspective, but I don't like I don't like her style, obviously.
Thanks, Christina. I feel like I'm making this up, but I feel like we read a book for this book club, or maybe not. Maybe it was another nonfiction book that I read, and I was just happy. I remember saying this out loud though, where I was like, I really wish that this was written by somebody directly related or something. It could be making I don't remember. Anyway, but I totally understand that, you know, especially with her mom, Laura Bible's mom, like literally being, she was at the crime scenes and the cops would come to her and ask, what'd you find? Like, what the hell? And I totally get what you're saying though. I definitely agree. There was something else that I read recently where I had that same idea. Shit, I don't remember. Michelle.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to unmute. Just kind of going back to the comments about her inserting herself and things like that. There's a point where it's helpful to the story, like talking about the Facebook messages and the phone calls, because that adds to that, hey, there's something else going on here. But I think the specific moment that I was kind of turned off to her narrative was when she was talking about how much weight she lost and how she was puking and all that from how intense it was. And I'm like, that doesn't really help the story. Like, okay, you feel like you're getting close to something, just tell us what that is, versus going into how this is impacting you personally when you're not involved personally. And oh, he wouldn't know that I organized this search until this book is published. And it's like just a lot of kind of patting herself on the back for her involvement type of thing when she wasn't involved when it was important, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And actually I'm getting a comment from Pomoster, which is a long time friend of mine on TikTok. Pomoster says, I think it's very telling how much we're talking about the author. And I know we're kind of like having that conversation about like people who, I think the deciding factor of people who either really liked or didn't like this book is based off of the author. Obviously, I mean, that's going to happen when it comes to true crime nonfiction. We're not going to sit here and say, you know, like, but I do think that is also very telling. This is the longest discussion that we've had about like the book itself, and I'm like giddy because I love it. Jazzalicious said, I'm so glad I'm not the only one that couldn't stand the way this book was written, which is so interesting because I saw that going into this on Goodreads. I was like, oh man, it's gonna be fun. People either really like this book or really didn't like this book. So I would love to show you the crime scene and more fuck ups is what I called it. I will get into that discussion. I titled the crime scene and more fuck ups. Number one, they didn't find Danny at first. Didn't even find him. Literally walked over him. Probably like stepped on him at one point, didn't find him. Two, they didn't search for the girls at all. They immediately suspected that Danny had them somewhere, and they had one of Danny's relatives go like just look for him, but they were like, we'll look for him in the morning. Number three, they waited until OSBI arrived. And now here's where at first I was like, okay, I kind of get it. Especially when I was thinking immediately of the Stephen Avery case from Making a Murderer, where that police department had no business being in his trailer at all. This police department still handled it poorly, but they didn't even want to touch it because of past issues that they've had with the Freeman family. They were like, you know what? We're going to let OSBI handle this one. So I've got a couple of mixed feelings about that, and I had a couple of notes about that as well. I don't remember exactly what they were. Here's the thing with tabbing. I have a million of these in here. I don't know where I'm trying to find. Let's see. Nope. Okay, yeah. So thoughts on the Craig County Sheriff's Office passing on the investigation to the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation because of bad blood. So we can get to that in a second. They halted the investigation of hopes of Dwayne, the stepbrother, finding Danny magically. They just were kind of like, we're going to wait, again, with them not searching for the girls. The warrant was handed to the next of kin, not the law. And late, also, it was late. They let Lorraine Bible, run the crime scene. And they had more than 100 volunteers roaming the property. And then children like running throughout the trailer like it was an amusement park. 7, the guns were never tested for evidence, or if it was one of Danny's guns used. They have no idea. So there were a couple guns located on the property, and I think there were guns like in the front yard. They never found out if the guns that actually killed the Freemans were Danny's, and they never tested them. Still to this day, never tested them. Authorities left when the sun went down. They just halted all the work. Nighttime, pack it up, boys. The family put up evidence markers, collected evidence. Law enforcement didn't even show up half the time. They were the ones who did most of the work. The girls were never filed into the NCIC database, despite Nutter saying he would. They weren't even registered as missing people like a day after the fire. The toxicology reports were either lost or sealed. Never heard. And also Lorraine following leads, i.e. the cartel. And apparently it was arson, but the fire marshal was never called to the scene. And that was actually on page 78. By state statute, the state marshals must be requested by local fire chief, police chief, or sheriff's office to conduct a fire investigation. No such request was made December 30th, 1999 to the state fire marshal's office. So that's all I had. I'm sure there were more. We didn't even touch on Shane's death in all of these because Shane's death was such a mystery. But I actually had well, never mind, I won't ask that question. Most of the Welchians, I believe, the people who lived in Welch, Oklahoma, and especially the Bibles were upset. CCSO, the Craig County Sheriff's Department, didn't investigate until the OSBI, Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, got there. Bad idea or good due to bad blood? What do you guys think about that one? They stepped on him. Yes, Emily.
I didn't think it was the worst move that they made, but I also thought it sucked because their like response to it wasn't just like, we already have bad blood, but like the reason they didn't look for the girls, they kept saying, was because they were clearly taken hostage. Like, I was like, that would be the reason to go look for, like, they're hostage. Like, if you're so sure that they're hostages and that like Danny is holding them hostage, like that seems like the green light. Like it just like their lack of involvement, like to me wasn't the problem. It was the fact that they were so certain that it was like a hostage situation, or at least that's what they were claiming. And then as a result, they weren't doing anything. Like it was just wild. It was so, if they had just said like they went on a road trip with Danny, like that would have made more sense. But the fact that they were like so certain that it was like it just was wild. It was wild.
Like, yeah, he's probably got him cooped up somewhere. We'll find him in the morning. It's like, I'm sorry, what? Come again? Yeah, I definitely understand though, and I do keep using the Making a Murderer Stephen Avery case as an example, just because that one I'm very familiar with. But again, like them going in the trailer obviously makes it look like they planted evidence, and you know, I'm not that they were obvious. This happened before that, I think, or this happened a little bit before it, but not that they. I do think it was one of their smarter moves. I don't understand how exactly protocol works with that kind of thing. Obviously, I'm not law enforcement, but even OSBI didn't handle it well. So Amber. Oh, and you're still muted. I'm so sorry. I see so many tabs. I love it.
It's fine. But it was in one of my highly annotated pages, like here's all of my like little angry comments. But I'm just like, even if y'all don't want to go into the trailer to go search for them, maybe send people out into the town to go search for the kids. Like, have y'all never been taught that the first 24 hours are the first, like the most important thing for missing children? And that the first 48 hours of a murder scene are also the most important for an investigation? Like, did y'all not get that part?
No,
like,
they were too
that
busy
was like
walking on Danny Freeman.
that. Like, literally, they see the cowboy boot prints and they're like, one guy wore cowboy boots, and that's Nutter. But I'm like, and then like they're like, oh yeah, where was it when they asked? They said they are poked in their heads, and that they said the body was found at 7:30, and then they just give up, and they're like, they were there for like an hour before they just we're done.
My friend
And
Lydia in
then
the
it's
TikTok
like-
live said, "I'd rather you handle my case than the OSBI." Lydia, I would handle that shit well. Don't you worry. I'm not trained in anything, but I know a few things.
And that's the thing is like, I'm like, so if like I had something like, so if the girls are kidnapped, that causes how much time to be wasted? Like bad blood. It's like, no, they didn't give a shit about what was happening to the family or anything, because if you cared, at least send people out to go look in other places around for the girls. If you're that concerned, like, okay, yes, we realize that maybe we should not enter the property because of bad blood. So let's go do this instead.
Yeah, while we're tackling this case, let's actually focus on something else.
Right? Like, and so I'm just like, and like my other theory is like, because I have this very in-depth theory that like the police not doing anything ties into the drug stuff, but it's like also it's like the way they were acting was almost like whoever set the fire and killed the Freemans, they were making sure they had enough time to get away.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like they wanted to make sure whoever was doing this wanted to make sure they had enough time to like, you know, get away to where whoever it was they were to get, so then they could be like, okay, yeah, no, we couldn't find them. And that was like, because the one thing is like they just kept going on and on and on. Like I had another, I think, note here also. It's like about how, because like how long it took them to notify the mother.
Oh yeah. They showed up at McDonald's like the next day where she was working at.
And
they didn't even like, they had nothing for her. And that's why she was like, oh, I'm gonna go look for my daughter since you
because it says like, you know, when they showed up at the driveway, like they saw the scene, it's like the scene unfolding, like a bunch of eyewitnesses confirmed that the deputies at the CCSO were just sitting on their laurels and watching along with the citizens as a smoking pit of wood was cordoned off of yellow crime scene tape. And then they just sat there waiting. And I'm like, imagine family members showing up to that scene and just seeing the cops sitting there doing literally nothing. Like, imagine showing up to that. And I'm like, I was like, also like, I'm like, yeah, I was just saying, at least cops could have at least searched the surrounding area so they weren't like, you know, doing nothing. And again, it was like they were guaranteeing that whoever did this got away. And I went out, what was it? The Charlie Cozart saying like, you know, this smells like bullshit all over it. I'm like, what exactly smells like bullshit, sir? What are you like? Is it like, what exactly is it? Is because it's since like given, especially what they tell us about Charlie down the line and how he was heavily involved in all of like the meth and the cocaine and everything. I'm just like, so what exactly about this smells, sir? Like
telling
Ash,
Ash,
I'm like, yeah, I'm just like going through like my 5 billion annotations of me just screaming at the cops.
Telling Ashes said even Lorraine knew to set up a grid system to search the trailer.
Right. Like, and they knew that, hey, you should be searching for the girls now, not waiting until the morning. Oh, we're just going to let Danny cool off and he'll bring the girls back. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that was another thing. They thought they didn't care for their well-being. It didn't seem at all. They were more so just waiting for Danny to like finish whatever he was starting, I guess, and then just
here it is. Oh yeah, and then like you have
down, go home.
The ADA, the assistant district attorney, shows up and still also says that there's nothing to investigate here. The ADA. And that's what I'm saying. I literally have here. I'm like, imagine being an ADA and spreading a rumor like this because you don't like, because he was saying there was like Danny had a lot of drug debt. And then I have a very nice reference to our local ADA because she does the same thing. And like when like and all this stuff, I'm just like, y'all, like you just literally wanted whoever did it to get away. So that then you can be like, oh yeah, no, we can't find anyone. They're all safe. Get like the all clear sign, like, oh, they're all set. They're okay. Okay, cool.
I don't know how many people, I forgot about this comment that I made. I don't know how many people are here from the last book. Oh, it was 18 Tiny Deaths, I think, that we were saying. It was the last book club meeting. That was it. So we were saying, I wish Frances Glesner Lee was the one to write this and not Bruce Goldfarb.
Almost done.
That's what it was. Because my comment was Frances Glesner Lee would not approve of this crime scene and how it was handled. But I don't remember how many people are here from the last meeting. Hi. Thank you for hanging out, Nathan. Michelle, I saw your hand raised. Same.
Sorry, having trouble again. Just looking at them waiting on the OSBI, I mean, they've got to have some kind of time frame for them to be able to get there. And just knowing how law enforcement operates, like if you know that somebody else is going to be doing the investigation, you just kind of hold what you have. And so that made sense for them not to go in and not to do, if there was no indication that they thought that anybody had survived and was possibly still in there, that makes sense why they didn't go inside. But they just took it all so lightly that, oh, well, Danny must have done this and he's probably still out there. And so they didn't see the girls as in danger if they were with him. But that part was just ridiculous and not looking for the girls. But as far as holding the scene, that I could understand since they were specifically waiting for somebody else to investigate.
I get it, but same. I think I would feel a little bit differently if this wasn't so screwed up. You know what I mean? Like if it was handled well, I would have differing opinions on exactly how they handled it.
Right.
I just took off my notes and now I don't have any of them. Let's see.
Katie, hop up.
So there was a couple of theories at first that Laura and Ashley did this themselves, and they were the ones to actually burn it in the escape. But a couple of not Francis approved. A couple of also whoever. Oh, thank you so much for hanging out, Bridget. Melanie, the 18 Tiny Deaths was not that great of a book. It wasn't as well.
Yeah, but I'm a professional hater over here. I would have been in my element.
It was not.
Okay.
It was not good. I really didn't like that book. So there were a couple theories, but of course, again, I haven't finished the book. So obviously we do get some sort of idea on potentially what happened to them. I hate to do this, but can someone tell me? Can someone tell me exactly how they got to arresting the guy and exactly how this kind of unfolded? If you don't mind, just like a little elevator pitch of what exactly what happened.
I think Amber could do that in photographic detail.
Well, Vicky also raised her hand too. So Vicky, go ahead if you want to, and then Amber, if you have anything to add.
Yes, so it kind of goes back to my comment that I made earlier about a box of information that is found that's been just sitting on a shelf through like two other sheriffs besides the one that was in office when the girls went missing. And this new sheriff just happens to find this box of information that has all of the stuff that that the Bibles had found. It was just a whole box of evidence, and they looked through it, and within, I can't remember exactly how long it was. I want to say it was only like a few weeks. They used that box of evidence to arrest the person who was responsible. So like if they had just done that to begin with, this case would not have drug out for as long as it did. And the thought is that the girls were dumped into some of the mines or tunnels that are nearby. And apparently those tunnels like dump out into a river. And so they were saying that they may never find the girls' bodies, but that they believe that that's where they were dumped after they were killed.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I read way too much of this stuff. Is this the case also where they were running into like certain jurisdictions and like certain cops retired, so they didn't have enough, they didn't have the ability to like open certain things? Like, was that here present here as well, or am I thinking of something else? where like because they switched, somebody retired and there was a new guy, they weren't able to get some of the information because that other sheriff or whatever retired. Was that the case here? I don't remember.
Sort of.
Okay.
Like some of the stuff like disappeared, but it's more not that they couldn't find it. We're just pretty sure that the old sheriffs just, destroyed it.
Where was
So
the
that way-
box? Where was the box?
Yeah.
Just sitting in like some dude's closet, or was it like out in the
I
open?
think like from like what I remember, because like I read most of the book and then I watched the 2 TV episodes on it for like to learn more about the arrest side of things. It's like basically it's the dude Phil Welch that like the 2 private investigators that the what's his face? I think it's Dwayne hires for $1.
I'm listening. I heard something outside.
That they talk about. Like they talk to a bunch to like they get the insurance card is linked to that dude Phil Welch, who is like this huge meth dealer over in Pitcher, and like basically like literally nobody has a good thing to say about him. They're like, he's the devil, he's the most evil human being you'll ever meet. He's horrible, he's terrible, he's literally the devil incarnate. And it turns out that like him and Ronnie Busick and I think the third dude, I can't remember his name, are basically kind of like the 3 that they say are responsible for everything. But by the time they figure it out, Phil Welch has died. The other dude has died. Ronnie Busick is the only one alive because they literally they didn't take the private investigator seriously, who went and investigated this lead like a month after the fire.
Oh, the private investigators that were there originally, right? There were 2.
Yeah, like they were like the ones that like got hired for like $1 by, I think it's like Dwayne or whatever, the 2 that just show up and they're like, hey, we found the insurance card. We're here to offer our services. They actually go and find Phil Welch and talk to him. Because I just like read that part the other day.
So yeah,
and
Lydia
they talk
saying
to
it's all linked back to an insurance card.
Yeah, it's like this insurance card has this woman's name on it, and they find out that the woman on the card, her boyfriend is Phil Welch, and she's only dating Phil Welch and hasn't left him because she's terrified of him.
Right.
Because he's literally like the devil incarnate, basically. Like, no, like literally, this is like the one person in this whole book when we were talking about like how she finds people that still talk good of these people. Phil Welch is the only person in this book that like literally they're like, he's literally the devil incarnate. He's Satan. Like that is like how everybody describes him. And they say that he's basically, they think he's the one who went in and was like the ringleader, and Ronnie and this other dude were like his little minions that just like kind of followed after him because he gave them meth and he made them feel cool and they got to go to his parties. And they think that he's the one, they took the girls back to one of his trailers, and during one of the meth parties were basically just, letting the girls be.
This is really not a good time to be hearing stuff outside. I keep hearing doors.
It's Phil Welch, the ghost of Phil Welch. But yeah, basically, I guess then Phil Welch dies, I think from like cancer or something. And then one of the other dudes dies. And so all that's left is Ronnie Busick. And Ronnie's also already in poor health. He's like,
he looks as old as time.
Barely can walk. And so the only person they can charge is Ronnie Busick, even though he's like, they think he's like one of the ones that was like out of the 3, the least involved, but he has all of it thrown at him because he's the only one they can prosecute, even though like literally the only one they're very sure about is Phil, but there's nobody around alive anymore that can confirm any of it because they never investigated.
Yeah, and early on in the investigation, I'm sorry, didn't mean to
I was
interrupt.
gonna say, I feel bad for making you like recap because I know you all have read.
Oh no, no worries.
No. But the frustrating part about it is that early on in the investigation, like somebody had told them that they, that Phil Welch was involved, and they never followed up on it. Like
and they say that like if they had
interviewed him, but the cops never like followed up on if he could possibly be involved or not.
Yeah, like I remember in one of the TV episodes I watched, I think it's like Lorraine or one of the other like family friends literally says that if the police, if the CCSO and OSBI had literally followed up on this Phil Welch tip and lead that they had gotten when they first got it, those girls would have been alive. Yeah, because they were alive they said that they were alive for about a month after the fire, and they got that tip like a week and a half in. Yeah, and if they had gone and investigated that tip when they first were given it, they would have rescued the girls. The girls wouldn't have died, but they ended up being killed after a month by Phil Welch and his 2 minions. And that was like the big thing at the end was that literally if they had investigated Phil Welch when they first heard about him, there was a good chance the girls would be alive.
Julie, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, Amber kind of nailed it, but I just kind of wanted to add that I feel like a big part of this that kind of came up a lot was something that basically whoever was in charge, I don't pretend to know like police hierarchies, but like whoever was in charge at that time just kept like blaming it on the people before them. Like, you know, this person didn't keep anything organized and didn't follow up on it, so it just got put in a box and put away. And so it just kind of kept being like, oh, well, it's not my fault, it was the person before. And now it's been 20 years. And it's kind of like, well, this, like Amber was saying, this literally could have been solved within 2 weeks if someone had just done it. But at any point in the last 20 years, it still could have been solved if someone had just done their job and done the due diligence. So I just kind of wanted to add that point because I feel like that came in at the end a lot of just saying like, hey, everyone else is just blaming it on somebody else when in reality, at any point, someone could have done something.
So do we have any ideas as to where the girls are? Are the mines? Is that the mines theory?
Yeah.
And then
like-
because of the high acidic content in those mines, that the bodies would have broken down very quickly. So it's very unlikely that they'll ever be found.
Yeah, like I think like again, one of the TV episodes, it's like for anybody who wants to watch, it's on Discovery Plus. It's like People Magazine Investigates, and it's like the very last episode of the last season. But yeah, it's like at one point they literally they go and like dig, they talk about all these different sites that they get like leads to that they like try digging up thinking it might be the case, and like and just each time it's nope. And because there's just so many mines, it's like they just they're still not giving up hope that they'll find some remnant of something. But it's like at this point, it's also kind of like, you know, we're still hoping, but we're also kind of accepting that there's a very good chance we'll never find anything about what happened to them.
There was a documentary feature that Jax was part of too, was there not? Didn't he like host something?
So there was one that's on Apple TV. I was hoping I could watch it with you guys, but it has like a 5.9 out of 10 on IMDb. So I don't know if it was that good. But it looks like there's an investigation discovery. There's Gone in the Night by True Crime Brewery. That's not actually the show. That's a guy on YouTube, but I'm sure it's good too. Oh geez, it's actually just pulling up articles for me. But Discovery Plus, which is great.
Yes.
I don't have Discovery Plus. And then yeah, there is like a 4-part series on Apple TV. That might be where
I think that's the one. I think it was like a broken out part by part breakdown.
Yeah, but that might be the one that was originally, I think, on like HBO that I had posted about being like, where the heck did it go? I know it exists.
Yeah, I read that it existed too, so I'm sure it is.
Yes.
I watched it. It was on CNN Plus, but CNN Plus was canceled last week. So I don't know how you're gonna find. I did like it. I kind of like read the book in chunks and watched episodes. It kind of lined up in a way that made sense, but it's worth watching if you can get a hold of it.
Did it add to did it bring anything new after you've read the book and seen did you find, or was it just more of the same kind of thing?
Same kind of thing, but it was nice seeing people talk and interact with her. And after this discussion, I realized that like some of the complaints about her inserting herself the way that she did, it bothered me. And then I realized, oh, I watched this series too. And then I saw how she interacted with them versus just seeing it on paper.
And that changed it for you?
It did a little, it did quite a bit, actually, not just a little bit. And then like just hearing Laura's parents talk the way that they did in it was
it
looks sad. Yeah, it, like sometimes I would just stop and be like, man, that's really heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, at the end of the day too, like I was saying, like it is taxing, even though it didn't happen to you. It can be very, very.
Well, anyone with empathy is going to feel something reading this or watching it or any of these cases.
So it looks like the Apple TV, I think it's available on Apple TV now. That's the only place I think it is available. It's a crime author and investigator, Jax Miller. and former police investigator Sarah Colleen tackle a mystery that has stumped authorities for nearly 2 decades.
I think that's it. It's also called like Hell in the Heartland, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh man, the reviews are not good. Oh my god, this is so okay. I don't. Somebody said skip it. What starts out as a really interesting true crime story quickly devolves into an ego trip for the 2 experts shooting this. This isn't a story about the missing girls. It's about 2 insecure women who want so desperately to be famous that they would exploit a real tragedy.
Oh,
And they spelled tragedy.
Oh God.
Okay.
that's bad.
Was it me?
Woof. Yeah, people don't like this. 2 women's desperate attempt to get on camera. Woof. Okay, well, I will say, recently I had to read this for something. I can't talk about it just yet. Wink, wink. I had to read something, and I wanted to give you this, and it's really not the same, but it is a true crime nonfiction book that I actually wound up really loving. And I think it's a great true crime book that doesn't have the author completely insert theirself. If you read this in that way, and felt like that about Jax Miller, I had to read this. The Menendez Brothers, or The Menendez Murders by Robert Rand.
Ooh.
This was phenomenal. I know a lot about these boys in this family, and I was being interviewed for something, so I needed to refresh, and I saw that this had wonderful raving reviews on Goodreads. And I guess the Menendez Brothers too. People are kind of torn exactly on what happened here, but I think Robert Rand does a great job of explaining it. And then we don't really find out until, I swear, like 2/3 of the way through, that he was actually there, like interviewing and talking with the boys. Like he was an investigative journalist, I'm pretty sure. But we don't. Yeah, journalist Robert Rand, who originally reported on the case for the Miami Herald and Playboy, has followed the Menendez murders from the beginning and has continued investigating and interviewing key sources for 28 years. So this guy kind of knows what he's talking about. Rand is the only reporter who covered the original investigation as well as both trials. Robert Rand definitely feels one way over the other as far as what happened with the boys. And I think if this didn't work for you and you want true crime nonfiction, holy shit, read the Menendez Murders. It was very well done. And Robert Rand really only inserts himself at the times when he interviewed Eric and Lyle Menendez. And he was talking about how difficult it was for him as a reporter because the boys just wouldn't speak to him for the longest time. And so that's it. And not to say that I didn't love, I still don't really know how I feel about this, to be completely honest, because again, I feel both sides. I really do, especially after reading this, because I'm like, I feel like this is how you do it. This is how you do it. And it didn't feel bogged down with too much information. So if you want something and it's got good flop, if you want something that is good true crime nonfiction, I highly recommend that. Is there anything else? This is like the longest we've discussed. I love it so much. It's been an hour and a half. If there's anything else anybody wants to say, go ahead, Amber. I'm all ears.
I kind of was interested in like any of us. I know I have my drawn out theory of like if any of us came up with theories on like how and why and who and everything. Cause like I like literally have like wrote it all out. I'm like, so I was like, hear me out. What if it was both drugs and police corruption?
That's what I got. That's what the vibe.
Yeah, that Danny owed dealers some money for drugs. That was well established, but the dealers were either backed by or had the sheriffs on their payroll. And so then the hit was ordered by the police and the dealers, and that's why they stalled so long on investigating. And it's like these like meth dealers, and then they also talk about Deanna Dorsey. It's another like schizophrenic guy that's homeless, just been wandering the streets that they like bring in like just comes in one day and kills Deanna Dorsey. And she's the one that literally was the only person that had all of the paperwork and everything that the Bibles and the leftover Freemans had been collecting about the case, and anything that Kathy had told her, like the letter that they talk about, like the letter to Kathy Freeman. Deanna was the only one that had a copy of that letter. And then she was murdered shortly after the fire. And they find out it's like this dude that's just a schizophrenic, but they think that maybe like if he was easily they're like, there's no reason why he would do this out of nowhere. What happened? And they're like, I wonder if maybe he was also kind of like, brought in as part of this plot, because they said they knew that I think they said he did meth, kind of bringing in like these people like, all right, you go do this, you go do this, you go do this. And then so that way they could kind of like eliminate any witnesses. And that I also was like, I think that Shane was almost like a warning to Danny, like, hey, you owe us all this money. You're not giving us this money. Okay.
I will say that was a great transition at the beginning there. Whenever I think Jack sat down with these two cops and they're like, oh yeah, they think we had something to do with this. And Jack's just like, why? And he goes, well, because people suspect that we killed Shane. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, oh, and
yeah,
then
I'm like, if your cops mentioning that, like,
yeah,
like I like RPD, my police, like in the last year, they've literally, I think they've murdered like 3 or 4 black men, and none of them, I can guarantee you, will sit down and be like, yeah, no, they think that we suspected they killed them.
Where are you at?
And like, they're not going to bring that up in casual conversation.
What city are you in? I didn't hear that.
Rochester, New York.
Rochester.
We had the big one, if anybody ever heard of it, was Daniel Prude.
Yeah.
He was, and then we had a couple others that didn't quite make the same scale, but it's like similar things, because none of the cops were indicted for Daniel Prude. So the cops were like, oh, sick. Free reign.
Yeah.
Carte blanche. And within literally 2 months of them nobody getting indicted, I think another 3 or 4 black men were dead. And we're just like, so that's where some of my theory comes from, because I'm just like, yeah, no, like one of the ones that they killed, they planted a gun on him.
Sorry, something fell off the wall and I just out of my skin. I'm like on edge. I keep hearing shit. I'm so sorry.
So that's my theory, is that the police were either payrolling the dealers or in on the whole scheme, and Danny owed money to the wrong dealers, the wrong people, and as a result, they were off. And then the police being involved, and may have also potentially ordering it, we're like, yeah, like we're not going to investigate because, well, it's one of us.
Yeah, it's
our people, or we ordered this, like why would we want to go investigate? And that's why I'm saying why they like stalled to morning to go look for the girls, because they're like, well, like, we want to make sure whoever did, like, who we sent to do this is able to get away and get to like a safe house or something. So
and it's not unheard
of.
Right. This kind of stuff just isn't. Emily, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't have a full-blown theory because, again, I got really lost in like the drug meth of it all. Like, but a really interesting part that I, again, felt like wasn't fully addressed or explored that might work with Amber's theory is like, they talk about the girl, I think it's like interviewing with the girls' friends who all say that the girls were really on edge because the Freemans, there were cops tagging their father, and like they would park outside like across the lawn and they would see them. And so part of the theory was like, at least in the book that they explored, was the idea that like, well, it couldn't have been drug related, because if it was drug related, they would have seen it because they're literally watching, unless they like had reason not to pin him for a drug thing because they were both involved. Like that would make a lot of sense, but I just thought it was interesting and not explored.
Did you, Emily, did you ever watch the documentary on Netflix, Why Did You Kill Me?
Mm-mm.
Oh my God. So I met them this past weekend in Vegas. It is a story of a drive-by. I haven't seen it in a while. Drive-by shooting. This girl just completely in the wrong place, wrong time, I believe. I don't remember it exactly, but the aunt of the girl had literally made like a fake MySpace account with the murdered girl's sister, made a fake Facebook account and lured in the killers who like had connections with the cartel. And right. The aunt is literally about to go meet these guys, and she's being interviewed. Oh, you got to watch it. She's being interviewed saying like, I was going to go meet them. I was packing. I was ready. And everybody was like, so she walked into the table this past weekend. I was like, I know you. And I was like, oh, wait, I shouldn't have said that out. I jumped the gun on that one. Oh, I'm sorry. I was like, I recognize you from the documentary. And she was like, I met my niece's murderer online, because that's the podcast that we were promoting. It was the wildest thing. But anyway, she did something similar where she was like, I'm gonna go meet these people. And I'm like, oh, I would never. Oh my God, could never. Yeah, I remember reading a part about that, and I'm kind of bummed that it's not more explored in the book, because man, I am gonna finish it. I am gonna finish it. That was actually the very first book club meeting. We read the Six Women of Salem, and I think it was like a 500-page book, and I don't remember if anybody had read it, but that was like our biggest question. Like, are we going to DNF this, or are we going to finish this? I'm definitely going to finish it.
I've been reading while we've been talking. I'm up to chapter 18.
I'm really interested in it. I really do want to finish it. I really do. I don't know when I'm going to be able to, but I really do want to. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. This has been the longest discussion that we have had, which is so much fun. Vicky, did you have anything else to add? I saw that your hand was up.
I just wanted to say that if there's another like true crime documentary that I watched called Unseen. It's on Prime Video, and I don't know if anybody else has seen it, but it's another one like you will watch it and want to punch somebody in the face because of the way the investigation is handled.
Is that the Cleveland Strangler?
So it's about 11 women in Cincinnati, I think, that go missing, and they're all prostitutes, and they're all killed by the same man, and they never investigate the crimes because these women are prostitutes. And so they just assume that they've wandered off or just gone missing because they have history of drug abuse, and they're all African American women.
What's it called again?
And it's called Unseen.
Unseen. I had something else
Yes.
really different in there.
Yeah, yes. I've seen that documentary too, and oh my God, because like they have like some of like they have actual like footage, because like one point one of the part of the reason why they're able to like they have like one of the women trying to escape and then getting dragged back in because of like surveillance cams on other houses, and like oh my God, like that shit, it's insane. Like because like they talk about like it's like because some of the women survived that he like tried killing, and so they talk to them, but like yeah, they're all African American prostitutes too. Also, like I think most, if not all, are also crack addicts.
Yeah.
So a lot of them are also in some relation, I guess, like kind of homeless as well. So like when he says like, "Hey, do you want to come spend the night?" They're like, "Sure, why not?" Like it's a warm, thinking it's gonna be a warm house for the night, and it's not.
I recognize the mugshot.
Like, and I'm not even going to like describe to you what the inside of the house was like, because oh my God, it's like a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
But like when
really
I say
bad.
like literally when I say they think it's a warm, they're going to like a warm, safe house or not, it's the complete opposite of a warm, safe house. Oh my God, no.
I didn't see the documentary, but I remember there was like a big expose, and like maybe it was the New York Times about these women. And the like most heartbreaking moment I remember reading was like such a visceral, like when one of the women who were raped and actually escaped called the police to this motel that she was raped in, and when they got there and started taking her testimony, they realized she was a prostitute and handcuffed her, like arrested her, because she was like, as she was talking about like basically how this guy tried to drag her into his trunk and like literally kill her, they like arrest her. It was it's insane. I totally agree.
Yeah, and they also talk about how like there were odors coming from his house, but nobody knew it was his house because his house was near a butcher shop, and I think it was a tire factory. And so originally first everybody thought it was the butcher shop, and it literally turned into the city made the butcher shop close down because they thought that the butcher shop was selling rotten meat because of the smell. And then they just assumed that it was a tire factory, but it was literally this dude's house the whole fucking time.
Yeah.
And
And
you're
he
just
was a
like,
known sex offender too.
Yep.
And yeah, and it's heartbreaking because some of these women had children.
Yep.
And their children were interviewed for this documentary, and they talk about how they begged and pleaded with the police department to investigate because their mom would never like just cut off contact with them. Like they knew her. Like it didn't matter that she was a prostitute, she was homeless, she was still their mother. And they just blew them off. And it just like there were some times during that I was like, it just infuriated me. Because they just blew off these women's disappearances, and didn't feel like they were worthy of investigating. And how many more died than should have because they didn't investigate from the beginning.
But on the positive note of it, it does kind of end where they talk about the court case, and like I think it's like 2 or 3 women survived, and they get to go testify against him in his like 11 count trial, or God knows how many counts they had. And like you can tell, like, and they're all of them, I think, and all of them at that point have gotten sober and have cleaned up, and they're like in like their company, like it's like you can tell like that energy of like, y'all try to do this shit to us then, we're gonna come for you now. And like it's like so powerful getting to see these women literally get to sit there in court and be like, hello, yeah, you're the dude who did this to me.
I will add this.
I'm going to talk about this. Goodbye. And like, you know, they're like, yeah, you know, like everything that happened, like, you know, that it was some stuff, but they're like, but getting to like, you know, testify against him and getting to help put him away after everything, knowing everything. Cause they're like, a lot of these women also like, they didn't exactly know that he had done this to all these other women until like one of them happened to because of things she sees in the house when she's trying to escape. But like a lot of the couples, they didn't know that he was a serial offender. They thought it was just like, you know, a shitty dude that tried to do this once or twice. And then all of a sudden they get contacted by the police. And they're like, yeah, no, this dude, you had contact with this dude on this day. Yeah, he's done this shit. Would you come testify against him? And they're like, yes.
It came out in 2016 and I hadn't heard of it, so I'm adding it. But I do want to wrap up really, really quick. Thank you guys so much. This was like the biggest turnout that I've had yet, and I'm so happy that people want to do this and read weird stuff with me. So May, we're already in May. May book is Radium Girls. Very excited about this one. I feel like everybody has read this except for me at this point. I'm very excited. I do have a reading guide that I have made. I don't think I've posted it yet in our book club's site. Thank you, Liddy. I was thinking about you the other day, Liddy, because I almost picked up Once There Were Wolves and I didn't. I'm so sorry. I'll pick it up eventually, I promise. But I have a reading guide for this. I will post it because people are wanting those. I actually did kind of help. I didn't love like reading guides before, but it was kind of nice for like the first couple of weeks, and then my life just hit the fan. And then of course, after, we do have a poll right now for the next couple of months. May, June is already selected as well. And then we are voting right now in the poll section on book clubs, July and August. Yeah, I don't know what months are which. I'm sorry. July and August. So go ahead and vote on those. We like to just plan it way ahead just so people can ensure they have a copy of the book, whether that be library, Amazon, whatever. But yes, highly, highly, highly recommend the Menendez Murders if you're able to get a hold of this. It would also infuriate you, but a different level of infuriation. Again, thank you guys so much. I do have a new podcast out. I would love to brag about it for a second because I'm really proud of it. I Met My Murderer online. The first episode is now live on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm the host, which is so much fun, and I got to talk to a bunch of amazing people at CrimeCon, which if you're able to go to CrimeCon, I highly recommend it. Yeah, thank you guys. Brag, girl. I know, I'm really proud of it. It sounds like a documentary. It's like a different way of podcasting that the producers of it are doing a really good job. So I'm so excited. Thank you guys for hanging out. I really appreciate it. This will be on my YouTube channel. So I will go ahead and pause.